One of the things that really excites me about Hope Beyond Tomorrow is that it's the missionary book of the year. There will be over 50 million copies circulated around the world in multiple languages. You can be some part of something big for God. You can be part of a movement. You know, in the writings of Ellen White saw streams of light going around the world, and she saw Adventists going out, giving out books and literature and giving Bible studies. I wonder if she saw you in that picture. God is going to use literature as these streams of light to touch thousands of lives. Join this mighty, powerful last day movement and give these books out to your friends and your neighbors and watch how the kingdom of God grows.
Will you do your share today? It's time to spread this hope everywhere.
may problema.
Taliwala aning mga butanga, kalipay ang mabati sa mga inahan nga makita ilang kabataan nga malipayon ug maharuhay ang ilang pagkinabuhi. Ang responsibilidad sa usa ka inahan, ilabihan ka mahinungdanon. Andam silang buhaton ang tanan bisan unsa pa kini ka lisod. Alang sa kaayuhan sa ilang mga kabataan, kami nagkasaludo sa inyong mga sakripisyo, mga inahan.
Morning, babies. Manglada ta.
Basta ikaw, sige ba?
Hello, babies.
Uy, hello!
Manglada unta ta ba? Libre bitar ako.
Sige, sure. Jan, unsa man? Ay, sorry. Dili ko kaubot sa outing karon. Nato ni research. Bawin na lang ko sa sunod. Sige, bye.
Sige, good. Bro! Basta, wala lagi si babies. Wala lagi. Sa studies.
Wait lang, John. Sinaitas na niyo? Ito pa ni. Laking kulit niya.
Sige, sabi akong trabaho dyan. Hey bro! Kalman lang. Kabalo ba ka ng feelings are fleeting? Na mga times na nata sa extreme emotion. Kung matod pa nila, you can never trust your decision when you are in extreme emotion.
Sakto, Jude. Sumala ka ron. If nakakasuko, ayaw diri subuto ko decision. Kay na ay tendency na lahi mo masulti, makasakit yakin ka sa iya ka.
Busa, kalmay o dumdumi ang giingon sa Ephesians 4 verse 32. Be kind to each other, tender
message from your friend, Hope Channel, South Philippines.
Friends, mga kapaglaom, are you ready to be a #disaster ready church? Dili pwede nga dili ta andam. Dili pwede nga dili ta makahibalo sa unsay makaluwas sa atong pamilya o komunidad.
Yes, siya ina mo ng #ready with ADRA is here again mga kapaglaom, ang inyong Adventist Development and Relief Agency nga mao ang humanitarian arm of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Hugot kamot nga maghatag og mga impormasyon para sa atong tanan o kita maluwas sa kalamidad.
Mao na mga kapaglaom, ayaw na og balhin sa imong channel. And let us all learn together diri lang sa inyong Monday Tambayan, mao ang ADRA TV. Yes, mga kapaglaom, maayong hapon sa tanan, Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, and all over the world, no? We would like to welcome each one of you sa ato ang programa matag Lunes, alas 5 hangtod alas 6 sa hapon, mao ang ADRA TV. Ang ADRA TV, mga kapaglaong programa
very good evening to all our ADRA TV viewers. Thank you for joining us today. Now, right from the start, you will notice that your usual hosts, Chantal and Mark, are not with us. However, it will be me, Prabhuk, and my friend and colleague, Amy, who will actually facilitate today's episode. Amy, do you want to describe to our viewers the program we have today?
Yes, good evening po sa inyong lahat. My name is Amy and I am here in behalf of ADRA Philippines to be able to share with you the different stories of our staff. And because of that, we have invited a very special guest this evening. His name is Sir Wilson Maranan, and he will be sharing with us his story. But before that, we would like to add a quick shout out po to all of our ADRA Angels. If you notice here, we are holding our very special ADRA Angel mugs. For those of you that we met when we went around the Philippines last March and April, we distributed this very special mugs. So we would like to give a shout out to you. Thank you so much for always supporting ADRA. And so we would like to continue. We would like to proceed now with our special episode today, which is my ADRA story. This is a very special episode wherein we want to feature the different types of people who work behind the scenes for ADRA. Because we know that for ADRA, there are a lot of things that are going on. But what exactly does ADRA do, and how does ADRA impact the lives not just of the people we reach, but especially of the people working for ADRA? So these episodes are meant to be stories of, shall I say, great men and women who work behind the scenes for the Adventist Development and Relief Agency, and not just here in the Philippines, but around the world.
Exactly. Thanks, Amy, for that introduction. If you have been following ADRA TV, you will remember that I was interviewed on ADRA TV a few months ago, actually. And during my interview, I threw out a challenge to someone. And I said, Wilson, the next time you're in the Philippines, you really need to come on ADRA TV and tell us your story. Now, we're very happy to have Wilson with us today. Wilson, thank you for being with us.
Sure.
Yes, so Sir Wilson, we have been mentioning your name so far, but then let us get to know the person behind the name. Who is Wilson Maranan, and how has he become one of the names that we relate to when we say ADRA?
Well, thank you, Amy Prabok, for the very generous challenge and invitation. It's my pleasure. I'm humbled to be part of this conversation, but also I'm very also happy to share the work of God, of Jesus, especially not only in Mongolia, but as you some of you are aware, I used to work in Sri Lanka. I used to work with Prabhu before,
Yes,
working 4 years in Sri Lanka, and
yes,
we cliche it might sound, we're just changing one person at a time. And yes, so I'm actually a Filipino by birth, educated, brought up here, studied, but migrated in the U.S. In 2006. But again, came back to where I belong, and happily working in Asia region as part of ADRA network.
Yes. So, Sir Wilson, maybe just so that we can provide a little bit more of background. Sir, you mentioned, yes, so you are a Filipino. You are from the Philippines. From what province do you come from,
Okay,
sir?
so I came from Batangas City, born and raised in Batangas City,
Okay.
Philippines. Yes,
And
in
so-
Batangas, which is the neighboring province
Yes, sir.
of Cavite.
And before you came into ADRA, what was your life like before you entered ADRA?
Oh, that's very interesting. In a nutshell, I think I've been in a number of engagements, both professionally as well in the church. But highlights, I used to work in the government under the leadership of President Fidel Ramos, who interestingly passed away a few months ago. I think one of the best presidents of the Republic. I used to work with him in Malacanang. I used to work also in the House of Representatives, 10th Congress, for 3 years, in Batasan Hills, in Quezon City. And after that, I went into the mainstream media. I used to work with Ramon Tulfo, the very well-known journalist and columnist
Yes.
of Philippine Daily Inquirer. After that, I went to the academy to teach for 6 years at the School of Development Communication at Batangas State University.
So this was a whole profession already before you even entered into ADRA.
Yes, yes.
Sir, so after this, you mentioned about working for the government, you mentioned about working for mass media, and then you mentioned also earlier about migrating to the U.S. Is it right to assume that it is when you migrated to the U.S. that you got to meet ADRA?
Yes, I'm actually born an Adventist. I know very superficially of the work of ADRA. I know the meaning of ADRA, ADRA, doing humanitarian, emergency work, up to that. Not quite interested, but I have a passion of doing development work, and really love working with communities, like empowerment, talking to people, and even listening to them, and sometimes, give some prescriptions of how to be productive citizens. Literally, when I was in the U.S. after I studied my international development postgraduate degree, that I stumbled and got interested in working with ADRA.
Yeah, so just to share something interesting to our viewers, and Wilson, please don't mind me, saying this. Wilson is an excellent cook. Okay, so myself and Wilson, we lived on the same compound. We were neighbors for about 3 years, and that's when I actually started tasting some of the good food, Filipino food, the chicken adobo, and what's the one with the eggplant?
Tortang talong.
Oh yeah, all of that. So we had a really good time in Sri Lanka. We worked together, and apart from being a good cook, before I say that, actually we wanted also Wilson's wife Raquel to be here. She's a bit shy to be in front of the cameras, but she's in the studio with us. So quick shout out to her, who is a big part of your ministry, and I think you will touch on that a little later. Now, apart from being a good cook, Wilson is also the country director of ADRA in Mongolia, which is a very interesting country, right? The disasters they have there is very unique. The programming they have there is very unique. The area of implementation is very unique. Okay, so Wilson, could you take a few minutes to describe the country, the work you do there, and what type of projects or programs you implement?
Sure. Well, this is from my engagement with Sri Lanka. As you are fully aware, I was invited to look at the living conditions in Mongolia because of the fact that they need somebody who can lead the team in the role of a country director. So I went there. Mongolia is a beautiful country, 17th largest country next to Iran, with 1.5 million square kilometer land area.
Wow.
3.5 million people. Interestingly, 72 million animals, livestock.
Wow.
Exactly. Beautiful. If you love nature, culture, adventure, Mongolia has it. And in terms of the work that we do, on top of that, before I go there, Mongolians are the only nomadic people group in the world. Basically, they move around every season. If you are familiar with people, when the weather changes, they adapt to that, depending on the need. But also, they've been doing it for the last 2,000 plus years.
So if I may interrupt you, how does that actually happen? Like, do they travel with their tents, or
exactly?
Do they rebuild houses every time they go?
Sure.
How does this happen? Like, how do they manage this?
Yeah, so they live, if you're familiar with the teepees of the American Indians during the ancient time, the olden time. So they have this circular, like tent-like structure, which they call ger, G-E-R.
Okay.
In Russian, it's called yurt, Y-U-R-T.
Right.
So it's collapsible, and it is covered with felt out of animal skin and fur, and basically, literally they fold it up with other animals, probably 500,000, 2,000 camels and sheep and goats, horses, including yaks. They travel like probably 40 to 100 kilometers away from the original place, depending on the season.
Right.
Of course, if it's winter time, they have this winter camp, they call it, like permanent structures where they put the animals on barns, and good to stay there for 3-4 months.
So how do they manage with like children's education, nutrition? How does that work?
I think they were so they are the most adaptable people in the world. usually they send their kids to cities, nearby cities, to study. But during winter times, I think definitely the schooling, take for example, as an example, is adjustable as far as the weather is concerned.
Right.
But basically, they are highly educated people, very smart people group, very educated. So I don't think it's a limitation, but also it's actually quite a privilege, and really really interesting to witness that we have this group of people, and yet they have the same access to basic services.
Wow.
Like education, health,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth.
So in terms of the projects that you do, the programs that you run
Sure.
in Mongolia, before we started this interview, you were sharing some details with me.
Sure.
Do you want to share those with our viewers as well? Because I'm sure that our audience at ADRA TV would really like to hear, because most of the time they hear what we do in the Philippines, and they know Disaster Ready Church, and now there's also PFA training that's ongoing on ADRA TV, the RISE project, we share information about it through ADRA TV. But what do you do what does ADRA do in ADRA in Mongolia?
So at least in the last 8 years, in portfolio we were able to implement at least 190 projects in the last 29 years.
Wow.
By the way, ADRA Mongolia has been founded in 1994 after the collapse of communism in 1991. ADRA Mongolia was in fact one of the very few INGOs that has been invited by the Office of the Prime Minister, because the INGOs are usually operated under the Office of the Prime Minister. From 1994 to current, today, we were able to implement 190 projects with around $32 million in its program portfolio in 5 areas, mainly in economic development and livelihood, education, health and nutrition, emergency management and disaster response.
Right.
And we have also the agriculture.
Right.
So right now, we are focusing on organic agriculture.
Right.
In the last 5 years. In fact, ADRA Mongolia is pioneering on that sector in the whole of Mongolia amongst INGOs. Why? Mongolia, as a government, approved the organic law in 2016. And in 2018, that has been so good. We were able to receive a funding from BMZ, the Federal Republic of Germany, Ministry of Development and Cooperation, for a 1.2 million euros for 4 years on developing organic agriculture, because of the fact that, as I've said earlier, Mongolians are heavily meat-based in terms of their diet.
Yes.
Because obviously, where in the world, Ulaanbaatar is the capital, it is considered to be, I think, the coldest city on earth.
Wow.
Peaking to at least negative 52.
Wow.
Centigrade.
How do you survive there? I'm sure you like it, because even in Sri Lanka you used to put down your AC to like 18 degrees Celsius,
Exactly,
right? So you must be having a good time.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, have a good time inside. Because literally, when you go outside, it will only take you 5 minutes. And you will freeze to death.
Wow.
So basically, what is amazing in that country is that it has been heavily influenced by the Russians. So even the heating technology in their houses, excellent. So you can wear your usual shirt inside the house, and basically if you work, you're always in the office, so it's the same thing.
Right.
So that's quite manageable. You don't go outside to work during winter time. So that's actually one of the main differences of ADRA Mongolia, apart from other country offices, at least in Asian context, because we adjust to what weather we are working with, right? So, like, for example, for planting, the height of that is between June to early September. That's it.
Right.
So it's the height of the activities.
Right.
As in double. Yeah.
Right.
And then it will die down.
Right.
It will basically taper down. So that's one, organic agriculture. And just to share with you, we praise God for His leadership. We have a very very experienced team in terms of skill set on organic agriculture. We have set up agronomists, very seasoned ones, and we were commended by the Ministry of Food, Light Industry, Ministry of Food and Agriculture and Light Industry of Mongolia, called Mufali, in terms of organic agriculture, products that we contribute to the national production. From our project alone, from Partnership on Organic Agriculture, POAG in short, we contributed 89.4% of organic products in the country in 2022.
Wow.
So that's quite remarkable.
Wow, that is.
And now we enjoy that opportunity to always, being consulted or being part of the conversation in the national level in terms of organic agriculture. That's one. Two, we do the climate change adaptation project, a pilot project on pastoral land management. We use the holistic management approach of obviously desertification, erosion, globalization, global warming. These are the byword in terms of how to mitigate all these issues globally. So in Mongolia, we are piloting a project where we are partnering with an international organization called Savory Institute to apply this holistic management approach.
Right.
Meaning, it's not the approach itself that will solve or that will contribute to the mitigation of the problem, but it involves the whole community, the herders, the animals, the public bearers, of course the people. Everybody is included in the circle.
So multi-stakeholder.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's a multi-actors partnership approach. And by so doing, hopefully we can dent some level of change and bring a certain level of behavioral change amongst the herders.
Right.
You have to understand that Mongolians are very seasoned herders since the time of Genghis Khan. We're talking about at least 1200, in the 1200s. They've been moving around the world. It's considered Genghis Khan as the biggest kingdom ever, as far as Hungary, to Japan, to Korea, to China, all the way even to some parts of Southeast Asia.
Correct.
But that's one. Another one is now we introduce also the fine wool sheep breeding project. As obviously Mongolia has that leverage on herding lifestyle and seasoned herders. We would like to develop and resurrect again the production of fine wool. And this is quite a lucrative business. And hopefully it will gain traction and we will be able to produce a nucleus, we call it nucleus, elite nucleus flock of fine wool sheep that will eventually be shared all over the country and produce a very good fine wool quality of wool.
So if our viewers want to get to know more about these projects, they could visit the website of ADRA Mongolia, right?
Yes.
And maybe we can make sure this is edited to include the website on the screen. I just have one more question about the projects, and then I want to move quickly to talk about you, because this is about your story, right? But I was wondering, Wilson, whether you want to take about 1 or 2 minutes to share very quickly about the NCD project, which is actually, if I'm not mistaken, funded by the church. We want to congratulate you on achieving that project actually for ADRA Mongolia. But if you can share a little bit about this and how the church is actually partnering with ADRA Mongolia to implement this NCD project. So maybe if you can describe what's NCD to start with, and then share a little bit about the project.
Sure, thank you, Prabhu. So NCD is basically non-communicable disease. Interestingly, in the global scale, Mongolia is a topper. So it's number one in, interestingly, NCD-related deaths. NCD include stroke, cancer, diabetes, and so on and so forth. And part of our I think mandate is to not only concentrate on a particular area, but we need to diversify, but not forgetting our past skill set on those areas before. It has been health was a very strong component of
Of the
area
church.
of the church,
Yep.
but also of ADRA in terms of our global network expertise. So yeah, we prayed, we planned, we were able to assess. We have a very good team there, and we connected with ADRA International. We invited the health department of ADRA International. Just so happened, ADRA celebrated its 30th year last year.
Wow.
And no other than the president of the World Church, Pastor Ted Wilson, visited
Wow.
the country. So it was like, okay, let's have a very good conversation. Let's discuss the need, how ADRA, because we were trying to strengthen also ADRA and the church, how we can collaborate, how we can create that synergy between our mission, our offices, but also because we believe we work as one. We work for Jesus.
Yes.
Full stop.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And we are very humbled that the church was quite attentive, but also very interested in connecting with us. So I don't want to go into the details. After 8-9 months, we got the funding of $500,000 for
Wow.
36 months.
Wow.
On this NCD project, we also shared the good news to different stakeholders, including the WHO, World Health Organization in Mongolia, and they were quite excited. They were telling us, hey, health sector was never been an area that has been explored or navigated by an INGO, at least in the last 12 years, here in Mongolia. So they're very, very engaged right now. In next week, on the 17th of July, in fact, we will be able to, we will going to launch the project on this. So we're quite excited. We will be dealing with 2,000 pupils with, of course, corresponding parents. So we're talking about like 4,000 individuals.
Wow.
Dealing with 4 schools, adolescents age range between 12 to 15. But this will be more on mitigating the risk factors of non-communicable disease. That's it. That's the overall goal.
Wow.
So this is more on the behavioral change.
Yes.
But also promoting, injecting, the approach that the church come up with. If you are familiar with celebrations,
Yes,
it's
yes.
an acronym like New Start.
Yep.
So it's a lifestyle approach and tool, and we can't wait for the very positive traction it will gain on the ground.
And I'm sure it will. And we wish you all the best for that.
Thank you.
Okay. Enough about the projects.
Okay,
Now let's focus about you,
sure.
Wilson. Let's start from your childhood.
Okay,
Now, you have told the story to me.
sure.
Oops, I think I bumped this off.
Okay.
Okay, you have told the story to me, and I would really love for you to tell it to our viewers. You didn't have a very smooth childhood. You had a challenging childhood. When you were very young, you were infected with polio,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And today, we would say maybe you are a PWD, a person with PWD, a
That's
person with
the general acceptable term.
term, yeah. How has that impacted your life, and do you think that experience of growing up with this challenge has brought, I would say, a different dimension to your work in ADRA?
That's actually a very interesting question, and I was thinking, I'm just humbled because when I understand, of course, because of my parents' upbringing, I think worldview as well, but more on the upbringing, parenting role that my parents really played during my growing up years. Yeah, I grew up with a very marred identity. Growing a person of PWD, person with disability, in a developing country is far different from somebody with the same situation growing up in the West, take for example. We're talking totally
Worlds apart.
Worlds apart, totally talking about different ball game.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when my parents continue to inculcate to me, you are loved by God. God has a special purpose for you.
Wow.
Very reinforcing, very encouraging. And yet, when I come to realize my identity in Christ is what matters. That changed the game.
Right.
And that's also that changed my perspective on looking at things. I'm not special because I don't consider myself as a special person. Yeah. And I remember vividly when I was growing up, interestingly or ironically, every time there's a speech, I studied mostly in public schools. There's a speech, I remember I started to go to the stage when I was grade 1, doing speech, and I know people are quite, okay, because I walk differently.
Yeah.
They look at me differently. But I think that helped.
How did it help?
Probably confidence, but also, okay, if others can, why can't I? Kind of like sort of mentality. But also I don't want to go beyond that.
Right.
Because it will be like overconfidence. So, yeah, I think exposure, but more on the parenting and upbringing of really reinforcing and really assuring you from my parents, you're fine. You're not special. You're not different. You're just like other boys out there
Yeah.
or child.
So praise God for God-fearing parents, huh?
Can I
Go ahead, Amy.
Maybe for those of us who have not experienced, but rather we grew up in a childhood that is already almost totally eradicated. We totally do not know what polio is.
Exactly. Yes.
And
That's
so
true.
when we talk
1991.
when we talk about polio, it's something that's like, what's that? Because we don't have a lot anymore. We are actually, this is one of the benefits of having a vaccine, that we now do not know the impacts that it could have. But can you, sir, just a little bit for those of us who were
Go ahead.
born after the vaccines were created, what exactly is polio and how did it affect your life?
I think the way I look at it, I'm not a medical professional. My wife is a nurse, so she can explain it better than me. But in my own for the sake of my self research, satisfaction, so I delved into the topic. So poliomyelitis is actually a virus. It is not, you can't contaminate with that. It's just like a virus. It's just like, I think, like COVID. In 1974, I was born 1971, so obviously I'm turning 52. But there was an epidemic
In the Philippines.
in the Philippines, but
Right.
not only in Philippines.
All
It's quite
over.
like probably some countries, not globally, especially in developing countries like Africa, Asia, Latin America, and even in the US. I see some people with polio as well. So it's quite a global thing. You will get. I got a fever, or somebody will get a fever, a child especially, most vulnerable are the kids, will get a fever, very, very high, the virus will attack your muscles.
Okay.
And that's the reason why if you have a polio, the very obvious
Symptom? Or?
obvious sign that you have a polio is basically you have an atrophy. Your muscles are atrophied, meaning they become thin.
Right.
Because the virus attacks the muscles.
Wow.
And that's it. It weakens your muscle. If it is severe, polio usually attacks the limbs, your upper and lower. In my case, it's my left leg, a little bit of the right.
Right.
But again, in my village, my mom was telling me we were 8, and all of the 8, I think 4 are my cousins, but I was the worst case. My mom was telling me there was no day, there was no, except for Sabbath, no Sunday. I diligently brought you to this physical therapist for 365 days.
Wow.
On the 7th month, the doctor or the PT saw the progress
Wow.
that you are responding to the. I remember that,
Oh.
interestingly, because my mom was like, do you remember that? I was 4 years old. Is that the guy with with the dog with long ears. And just, yeah. And I can remember those wires of different colors electrifying my nerves.
Muscles, yeah.
My muscles.
Wow. Okay.
That's it. And I started to walk. My mom was telling me, Wilson, actually, I was shouting, I was crying out to God. Because the PT was telling me, Miss, Ma'am, I think I can only heal your son, and he will be blessed if he can walk with crutches. But the Lord has a different plan.
Yes, indeed.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Not just walking through like normal streets, but climbing up the mountains of Mongolia and
And Sri Lanka.
Visiting our
Definitely,
theistic
yeah.
community.
Doesn't hold you back at all. Now, how many years have you been with ADRA now, Wilson?
If I will be excluding the internship full time, I started in 2016 as an interim, remember?
Right, yeah.
That's the time that we first met in Sri Lanka. So 2016 up to this moment.
Okay.
So how many years is that? 8? 7?
Yeah. So, is there an experience while you were in ADRA that changed your life? Some experience. And maybe you could share it briefly with us.
Sure. I definitely that validated my view in life. I remember when I was interviewed in ADRA, when I entered as an intern, I was asked, "What is poverty?" And just like, well, poverty for me has two meanings. It's basically material lack. That's what the dictionary says, and poverty of the mind. You know, because there's so many people, and I'm part of that. I grew up poor, and so poverty to me is not foreign. You know, I'm on it. I'm not saying, you know, I'm rich now. I'm rich in friends and relationships and experiences, but that give me a whole dimension of poverty in terms of understanding that when people says that I'm poor and they resign to be poor, that's quite challenging. Because it will take a while for them to understand, hey, no, you're wrong.
Yes.
You can free yourself from poverty.
It's a mindset.
Exactly. By 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, depending. You know, there's so many ways.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. The Lord has been so good. We were given the mind to think, but also to analyze. But two, also, the more that it gives me that joy of sharing my own experience of being poor to them, that things can happen, things can change. Just trust in God and trust in your skill set.
Yeah.
You can win over poverty.
That's so true. Amy?
Yes, so sir, you were like there's one question here that I want to ask, but especially with regards to your experience, I'm sure there are many characters in the Bible that you can relate your life to. But if you would choose one biblical character that you would maybe best describe your, not really best describe your story, but rather you feel that you could relate to, this is my story.
To be honest, I don't know. For some reason, I'm quite consistent with the personality of Moses. Moses, of course, he was brought up in a royal palace with royal household and and whatnot. But in a way, the Lord, I believe I'm God's son, and we are princes and princesses of heaven. But the thing is, he was very reluctant, and doesn't know how to speak. I think that's he thinks that his disability, right? And that's, Lord, can you use my brother Aaron to speak for me? And the Lord was so merciful, Okay, I will use Aaron to speak for you. But the way the Lord empowered him, the Lord trained him, it took him 40 years in the wilderness. It took him 40 years in the desert to understand, to undo, all the things that has been inculcated in him, as a person. Because he was actually groomed to be the next Pharaoh.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And yet, I love God. I would like to follow Him. And for me, that's quite strong. But also, because see, I'm coming now from a context of being an Adventist person. I never studied in an Adventist school, except for 1 year. I was grade 4. So
Okay. Yes.
that's it. So grade 5 went back to public school, and then all of my education, even in my graduate studies, no Adventist schools. But I'm humbled that the Lord continue to give me that level of understanding. It's not about who you are; it's about me, who is training you, and I love it. And that's where I think Moses, going back to the character of Moses, he depended on God, but he was very raw. Lord, I can't lead these people. I can't speak. These are your 2 million Israelite, followers.
Yeah.
But Laban, the father-in-law, hey, Moses, just divide the group into, into tribes, and like that. And I think the Lord is continuously teaching me. But also that's what He did to Moses as well. The rest was history.
Yeah.
Quite powerful story, at least for me as a person.
I hope you are not finding the questioning too challenging, Wilson. But we have an interesting question.
Sure.
Okay. If you could describe your experience in ADRA in just one word, what would it be and why?
I think I can aptly say that it's all about mission.
Mission.
That's the word. Mission.
Why mission?
I might be weird. Because when I remember when I was even in college at the university, my professor just abruptly asked, "So how do you see yourself in the next 5-10 years?" And when the question, prompted me to speak and share, I told my professor I would like to be a missionary, and I was taking film and audiovisual communication at the University of the Philippines, College of Mass Communications. So you must be barking in the wrong tree.
Oh, no.
But she just retracted quickly, and Wilson, I believe in missions. I believe in missionary work, and go for your calling.
Wow.
So now, the more that I see the hand of God, God as a living God. These are my takeaways now.
Yeah.
I praise Him because of the fact that I know myself. I'm an ordinary person, nothing special. And sometimes things are overwhelming, Prabhu. Amy, as you know, in the work of ADRA.
Correct.
It's like, why am I here? What I'm doing? But the Lord will always lead you to a certain level, not only of understanding, but also a certain level of commitment. Okay, at the end of the day, it's not my work. Lord, I'm not here because I'm awesome. Lord, I'm not here because I can do it. It is you who sent me here.
Yeah.
Use me.
Wow. Yeah.
I think that message, sir, that just not resonates with your story, but many of us. Over here in the studio, we have several ADRA staff that are currently here. We have our interns. We even have our very helpful media team from SSD that I'm sure that was listening to your story, and we know, Lord, that we know, sir, that the message of mission is something that deeply emanates in all of our hearts. That is why we are here, and that is why we are doing the things that we do because of this mission. And so, Sir Prabhu, do you have maybe just a takeaway before we end our short talk?
Honestly, it's a very inspiring story, Wilson.
Thank you.
My takeaway is that regardless of who we are and our capacity, if we just submit to God, He can do many things through us, even though we are really not worthy sometimes. But it's His work, and He will get it done through us. That's the way I see it. Yeah.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
And definitely that is one thing that we always say, that there's a big work to be there's a big task up ahead, And usually, it is those people who think that they can do it are the ones that cannot be used. But it's those people who actually are empty, who empty themselves and humble themselves before the Lord, that allows the Lord to use them. And they can be amazed at just how the Lord takes them. Many of your stories, sir, I was thinking about maybe the Israelites going through the desert and all of these unexpected challenges that they faced. But the Lord always leads. And that is very evident, sir, in your story as you made your way through your own life and as you were working through ADRA and as you are now sharing your story with us here. And so I guess, do you want to, before we end, I guess, are there anything, sir, do you want to greet anyone before we
Yes.
end?
Final words?
Greetings
Greetings to someone?
Send some greetings over to your friends, your country, your office, your other staff.
So thank you for having me here. It's really...
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. So it's quite humbling, but also to share the story of God in me, in us. It's not actually my story. It's His story. But also to be part of this beautiful, unique, distinctive work and ministry of Adventist Development and Relief Agency. Not only in the Philippines, not only in Sri Lanka, not only in Mongolia, but in the world. As we know, the world is rushing to her demise. We know that as the remnant church. And we can see the intensity of not only disasters, catastrophes, but also world events taking place. And by doing so, the more that we need to be more conscious, more committed, but also more loving and compassionate.
Of course.
I think the world is too far away already.
Yep.
And the Lord is inviting us to come back to Him. And in the work that we do, I always have this very favorite statement that we don't need to preach. We just have to live the gospel of Jesus.
Yes.
That's true. Thank you, Wilson, for being with us today. Amy, I think we should tell our viewers that we have planned a few more episodes, such as this, of stories from ADRA staff in the Philippines and from around the world. So please be tuned to find out more about these type of stories, right? So we have lined up a few interesting guests later in this year, and we'll be sharing those stories with our viewers. So I guess we can end our episode for today.
Yes, and we would also like to maybe just a few, not shout out. Yeah, we would like to also thank especially the SSD Media Center.
Yes, definitely.
Over here that has hosted us for this very first episode. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, JD. Thank you, Tin. Thank you, Jessica, and the rest of your staff here. You're very welcoming, and we praise the Lord that we have a lot of media ministries like this around the Philippines to be able to share all of our stories.
Yes.
And so, how do we end this?
Thank you very much for tuning in, and hope to see you soon.
Yes, in the next episode of My ADRA Story.
Yes.